Yeah, inflation. What exactly is inflation? I love that. Yeah, already telling me. I love it. I love it. I like students like you. Yeah, the increase in the aggregate price level or the increase in the general price level of business services. Very good, fantastic. All right, so in this class, we'll be looking at types of inflation, causes of inflation, effects of inflation, and then as the assignments are going to be having recommendation of policies to curb inflation. Okay. And we've already established in the previous lesson that inflation and disinflation that they have similar effects, just that one is more severe than the other one. So other types of inflation, there are two major types of inflation actually. You have the demand pull inflation and the supply push. No, what am I saying? Cost push inflation. So we have demand pull inflation and the cost push inflation. So what exactly is demand pull inflation? So demand pull inflation is the type of inflation that occurs when the aggregate demand for goods and services exceeds the capacity that businesses can supply, right? So when the aggregate demand for goods and services exceeds the capacity that firms can supply, such that firms in the short run increase the price of their goods and services since they could not meet up with the higher demand. All right, so if I am selling a product and I only have 20 of it available and there are 50 people looking for it, okay. If I know that I can actually increase my product from 20 to like 50 within a particular period of time, so what I'm going to do is I'll begin to jack up my prices. So if you can pay for it, pay for it. If you cannot pay for it, you go. So that's it. All right, so demand pull inflation just happens because um, people have too much money to spend. People have a lot of money to spend than what business can cater for. So there's a lot of money in circulation. Then you want to buy this, you want to buy that, but firms cannot increase their their productive capacity to meet up with that demand. So in the short run, they jack up prices. So that prices that they're jacking up is what is being referred to as the inflation that is occurring due to excess demand. Due to excess demand for goods and services. So that settles that. So demand pull inflation is consumer side. So consumers are the ones looking for products at a rate that is much more than what firms can supply. All right, then cost push inflation. This is inflation caused by increments in the cost of production of businesses. So it could be due to increments in the cost of raw materials, like petrol in Nigeria, going from 195 naira under when Buhari was living, and then like leaving for a new president to come in, and it's currently about 1,050 naira in a year and 5 months. Just within a year and 5 months, price went up from 195 naira to 1,050 naira. What are you going to call that? 200, 100 to 300, 300 to 600. So we've experienced about 400% increase or more in prices, which is not cool within 1 year. So if you have business that have made projections that are planned, okay, this is what we want to do, this and that, and then they are experiencing and they use fuel a lot to run their factories, and you are having this sporadic increments in price of oil, which is a major input. You are going to be having higher cost of production. So businesses don't want to lose money. So what they just do, especially if they have inelastic demand for their product, or if their product has inelastic demand, so they are just going to push significant parts of that increments in cost of production on the consumers in the form of higher prices. So if that is happening in the economy overall, right? So that is what we refer to as cost push inflation. Inflation caused due to the increase in the cost of production of businesses. Now, imported inflation. So imported inflation is inflation that arises in an economy from importing products from countries already experiencing inflation. Now, Nigeria is experiencing a lot of inflation right now. And let's say you are in Ghana or Togo and you're buying something from Nigeria. The fact that you're buying at a very high price in Nigeria simply means you have to sell at higher prices in your country to make more money, to make like more revenue, not necessarily profit, but to make more revenue, right? So that is imported inflation. You are importing inflation from another country and making it happen. So if it's the case that a lot of Ghanaians, a very significant number of Ghanaians, maybe 60%, 70% of Ghanaians, are buying products from Nigeria to resell in their own economy. So since Nigeria is experiencing a very high inflation rate, they are going to automatically experience high inflation rates too, because they have to like add their profit margin, right, to whatever prices that they are charging for their products. Now, chronic or creeping inflation or persistent inflation. This is the increase in inflation on an annual basis less than 5%. So if the inflation rate was 5% in 2027, in 2028 it goes up to like maybe 8%. In 2029 it goes up to like 11%, then 15%. So it keeps increasing on an annual basis like that. But the increments is more or less around 5%. So like it's not more than 5%, so lower or more, lower or equal to 5%. Not necessarily 5% every year, but something within 5%, right, on an annual basis. So yeah, you may not really notice that inflation is actually happening because it is small. So let's say 2% inflation rate between last year and this year, and this year and next year about 1% inflation rate, then next year and the year after it's about 3% inflation rate. Prices are still like reasonably stable in the economy, right? So, but the fact that it's happening, annually, and there is no deflation in between, there is no disinflation in between. No, there might be no, there is no disinflation in between, right? So you have 1%, 2%, 2%, 3%, all of that. So the fact that you keep having those things, so your economy is experiencing a creeping or a chronic or a persistent inflation. So the next one that we have here is running inflation. So running inflation is the inflation around 10% on an annual basis. So the average price level is increasing around about 10% on annual basis. So it is not cool actually, because your money is going to be losing value. It's going to be losing 10% of its value on an annual basis. So in a couple of years, in less than 10 years, so not 10 years up to, actually, maybe 7, 8 years, you realize that prices have gone up 100% between the seventh year and like the first year. Okay, so like that's about. So like it's not really cool. It's not really cool. So what's um if you use 1 million to do something this year, 7 years later to do the same thing, you need about 2 million naira or 8 years. I didn't say 10 years, so like it's not 10% like every year. It's not like 10% and 20%. Like it's not necessarily calculated that way. So in about 7 years or 8 years, you would have the 100% increment in price level. All right. So then the big boy there, hyper or galloping inflation. So this is the inflation rate that is about 20% or more on an annual basis. About 20% or more. Prices are rising incredibly fast on an annual basis. All right, so inflation could be up by 20%, could be up by 50%, on and on like that. And it could be even worse, it could be more than 100%. So where money is losing value at a very speedy rate, right? So and it distorts a lot of things in the market. You can't make plans when you don't even know what price is going to be like next month or like by the end of the year. So it's not easy to make plans. And another thing that we have here is stagflation. So this is a situation where there is a high rate of inflation and high rates of unemployment happening simultaneously. People are unemployed, there is inflation in the economy. It doesn't actually make sense. But then actually it could be happening. In Nigeria, we're experiencing stagflation. A lot of people are not employed or underemployed as the case may be. And there is a fact. Our inflation is terrible. Like prices are rising every week, or every 3 days, thereabout. But let's say every week, right now in 2024, it doesn't make sense. Doesn't make sense. So that's that. But normally, from your understanding of the Phillips curve, which is a curve that shows the short-term relationship between inflation and unemployment, you realize that there is an inverse relationship. Is it inverse? When inflation is up, unemployment is down. Like, yeah, that's inverse, right? So when unemployment is down, inflation is up. When inflation is down, unemployment is up. So that's an inverse relationship. But according to stagflation, there is a direct relationship. So unemployment is up, inflation too is up, right? So your Phillips curve in this situation is going to be like a supply curve, like a normal supply curve. So just it's going to be something like this. So inflation rate, right? Unemployment rate, yeah. And then it all doesn't make sense. Anyway, what are some of the causes of inflation? These are not all the causes of inflation. So I like talking about things that are contemporary, like things that are happening in the economy as at a present time. So number one, we have insurgency, war or terrorism. So in Nigeria, there is a very high, like food prices are very high in Nigeria right now, and then the reason is basically due to insurgency. Um, herdsmen not allowing farmers to farm on their farmlands, right? So they will attack them or take their cows and then lead their cows into people's farmlands. They destroy the crops of people on a very large scale. right? And when things like that are happening, you have farmers being scared to go to their farmlands. You have farmers not planting enough that are supposed to like plant. And at the end of the day, the whole economy suffers it because these are farmers that also be producing things, food that Nigerians should be consuming, and even for export. And some of the things, some of the crops that even industries are supposed to be using, right, as raw materials, like agro-allied industries, as raw materials for their output. But insurgency is not allowing farmers to like farm as much as they are going to want to farm, and it's causing food shortage. And once there's food shortage, then you expect that the available food is going to come at high prices. So that is one. Then number two, lack of infrastructure to enable production and distribution of goods and services. Right. So when you don't have supporting infrastructure, if you need electricity to produce your product in Nigeria, electricity is not yet stable. Right, like in all parts of the country. So there are countries where I went to serve, there was no light all through, no government light, like no light from the government. So except you installed solar electricity or you're using generator, right? And before I got there, I stayed there for a year, and then before I got there, I was told that years before, like prior that period, they've not been having light. They've had light only once in that community, and or maybe for a very short time. So for years, they've not had electricity. So imagine that your company, no, you won't even want to start your company there. But imagine that maybe for other considerations, maybe you are close to your raw material, but then to process the raw material is going to be taking electricity, and then you also have to, you'd have to be augmenting, not that is not even augmenting. You'd have to be like using solar or whatever. So that is going to lead to a very high cost of production, which you pass on as increment in price of goods and services. Now you could also have what do you call it, bad roads, or so your goods and services are going to spoil like along the way, or maybe the truck drivers that are meant to carry your product are going to charge you a very high price to take your product from Benue State, from Kebbi State to Lagos State. So and once that is happening, of course, you don't want to make losses, so you are going to like pass on the prices, the pass on the high cost of production on the consumers through the increment in the price of goods and services. So I call them supply side because these are causes of inflation from the producer angle, right? So cause of inflation from having a lack of supply, adequate supply for of a particular commodity in the market. So it's just like causes of supply, causes of cost push inflation, like something like that. Now hoarding. Now there are people who hoard products for the sake of um, getting higher returns. So the hoarding is the creation of artificial scarcity of goods and services for the purpose of getting higher revenue, higher profits in the future. So it's not as if the goods are not available. Like middlemen could hoard, all right, so where the manufacturer has already sold the product out, or you have wholesalers and retailers not allowing the product to be available in the market. So it creates artificial scarcity. So by the time they are now supplying the product into the market in bits, it's going to command a very high price. Right. So there's a difference between hoarding and storage. For storage, you're just preserving for future use, not for the sake of creating artificial scarcity. But for hoarding, you're not necessarily preserving for future use. You are preserving to create artificial scarcity in the market so that you'll be able to generate a very high revenue and profit by extension, and by the time the products are eventually being released into the market. All right. Then you have harsh government policies. So the government just comes and says, I'm increasing corporate profit taxes from 15% to 35%. That can be very harsh. Now, some organizations may not be able to cope. So if they are supplying goods and services in the economy, then they might just shut down or just leave and go to neighboring countries. Right. So this, when there is harsh government policy, it could also cause inflation in a particular economy. Then next one is increase the minimum. Lack of storage facilities. This is also affecting agricultural products. Right? So, where farmers are planting, and by the time of harvest, there's abundance. But after the period of harvest, shortly after the period of harvest, there's scarcity. Why? Because they couldn't store most of their produce, and then they've spoiled, they got damaged, and all of that. So you are going to be having increments in food prices. If that is happening like generally, right, for like most of agricultural crops. So you begin to have increments in food prices during off harvest season. So it could lead to inflation during off harvest season because they could not store their products to preserve them, right, for periods where for periods for off harvest periods, right, to sustain the economy till there is another harvest. Now, next one is increase in minimum wage. So when there is an increment in minimum wage, how does that affect an economy? So it's an increment in cost of production for businesses. So where you as a producer are you're paying um 50,000 naira as minimum wage on a monthly basis, like as the wage of your workers on a monthly basis. But the labor union has struggled out with the government, and now you have to pay workers 95,000 naira. So that's 45,000 naira increments per worker. And then that is not actually how it only works. It is not just those that were earning 50,000 naira that will be earning 95,000 naira now. Even those that were earning maybe 120,000, maybe managers in your company that were earning 120,000 naira, you have to increase their own um, wages now, their salaries. Not necessarily by 45,000 naira, but there needs to be a significant increase. So theirs may go up to like 150,000, where you have 10,000 naira to eat. Like there's going to be an increment in your wage bill as a company, and some businesses may not be able to cope, especially small businesses, right? They may not be able to cope and they shut down. That reduces the output of goods and services in an economy, right? And then that may also lead to um, um, cost push inflation because it is going to lead to scarcity. There's going to be dearth of what was abundantly produced by a lot of producers in the market. Now, only fewer number of them are able to produce those goods. Right? So it's may happen that what is now being produced as a result of increments in minimum wage might be significantly less than what was produced before the increment in minimum wage. Even though increment in minimum wage is a good thing for those receiving the wages, right? But then for businesses, they are often very, very reluctant to increase minimum, to like agree that the government should increase minimum wages because they know that it's going to lead to a significant increment in the wage bill, right? Wage bill is just talking about the amount of money that a business has to pay all of its workers, like the wages or salary bill. Okay, now I think the last one here is talking about the importation from countries experiencing inflation. So if you're, I think I already explained that. So if you're importing from a country that is experiencing high level of inflation, because you want to resell the products in your country, and you need to like make money to make profit. So you are going to like charge a higher price than the price that you bought the product. So that will cause another inflation in your own economy. All right. So now after this, we look at the demand side, right, and we talk about the effect of inflation. So from the demand side, what could be the possible causes of inflation? Number one, high population growth rate. Once you're having a lot of people in your economy, then they are going to be demanding for higher number more goods and services, which may be more than what suppliers can supply at a particular period of time, leading to a demand pull inflation. So I said it, which may. So if businesses have the capacity to meet up with the demands of the higher population, it's not going to cause any inflation. So like it is, which may lead to that if the business capacities are not up to what people are looking for, cannot produce the up to the goods and services that people are looking for, then that can cause demand pull inflation. Number two, excessive bank lending. So if there is a very low interest rate in the economy and people could just approach the bank and collect loans, so they are going to be having a lot of money to deal with to spend, and that can also lead to a demand pull inflation. So when banks cannot do excessive lending with higher interest rates, it's not possible. So it is for them to do excessive lending, it simply means that the interest rate on loans are very low. And people could just be like taking notes to be doing different things in the economy. So they have a lot of money to spend. That can cause a demand pull inflation. Now, lower personal income taxes. So if the government decides to reduce the income taxes of individuals and households, then it gives them more disposable income to like spend. Right. So if the personal income tax are really, really low. So I didn't just say lower taxes here because there are different type of taxes. So tax could also mean the corporate profit tax, and that's not the one we're talking about here. So lower personal income taxes. Once taxes are reduced to like a small amount, maybe from 17% to like 5%. So people across the economy they have much more money to spend now, and then that can lead to demand pull inflation. Then number four, you have increase in government spending. So government is borrowing money, taking from its budget to spend on this. You're doing road, building schools, and building airports. You're just engaging in a lot of infrastructural projects. You're engaged in a lot of transfer payments, like maybe unemployment benefit, child support, scholarships, and all of that. Government just pumping money in the economy. So before you know it, there's going to be excessive amount of money in the economy, which may be more than the goods and services that businesses can provide. at that particular time, so leading to a demand pull inflation as well. Now, I taste for imported product. It is something affecting us in Nigeria. Nigerians like exotic things, from clothes to cars, jewelry, and whatever. Right? If we can even import sand, I don't know if people are importing sand. If we can even import sand, I believe Nigerians are going to be importing sand. Right? So like we just love importing it, and not that we import cheap things. Like we love importing expensive things. Like our country is just like that. Our people, they are just like that. So if you happen to be importing from a country that's already experiencing a high level of inflation, then you're going to like bring in that inflation into your economy, because you have a very high demand for imported products. So sometimes you are forced to import from a country where the product is very expensive, but because you like the product, like, so you just bring it, and then this to inflation in your own economy. So there are other reasons that can cause inflation from the demand pool side, and but then, so that we can't talk about everything. So that we can go to the next thing. So impact of inflation is about 10 years. I don't know if I'm going to explain them deeply. Reduction in purchasing power of money. Obviously, that's the first thing. All money could do before, the same amount of money wouldn't be able to do it again. And then that links up with number 10, which is fall in living standards. So if I was earning a particular amount before and that money has not increased, so if let's say I could buy drinks on Sundays, I could buy drinks after everybody has eaten at home. So I from my pocket, I buy drinks for everybody to drink, so we enjoy ourselves. So we buy chicken, etc., etc., like that. So now that there's inflation, we will not be able to do that again. So everybody can just switch to Zobo. That's when we begin to talk, say that. That's when we begin to say that Zobo is healthier. It's not necessarily because Zobo is healthier that we are drinking Zobo. The real reason is that our real income has reduced. We cannot buy the drinks that we were buying before, right? And then you may switch from chicken. You may just start eating fish, or maybe switch away from fish to a cheaper product. And sometimes maybe the school that you're attending, so your parents will just say, see, our purchasing power can no longer carry, so they take it from that kind of school to, so it reduces your quality of life. I can reduce your quality of life, which is same as reducing your living standards. Now, creditors lose and borrowers gain. Those who lend money before an inflationary period, by the time you are returning that money to them, that same amount of money can now do less than it could do when it was lent out. So if I lent you 100,000, you could have used the 100,000 to like build a room, a house, a room. But now that there's inflation, I may not be able to like use 100,000 to build a room anymore. So like maybe just a part of a room instead of an entire room. So I'm losing out because they are repaying me during an inflationary period. And alternatively, you are gaining, because the worth of that money when I give it to you could do much more than the worth of the money when you are repaying it. So it's as if I dashed you some money due to inflation. Okay, then you have fixed income earners lose. People that are on fixed salaries, people that are like pensioners, people that are earning pensions. This is the amount of money that comes to you every month. Like it's as if you can increase it, right? And if you can't increase it, then you're going to suffer, because that money is going to be able to do less than it could do prior inflation. Now, reduction in consumer confidence. So, in an economy where, let's say, the economy is experiencing um, hyperinflation, for example, where prices keep going up, going up, going up, people's confidence in the economy is going to diminish. Right? You won't begin to believe that the economy can really do well again. Right? And which is part of what's happening in Nigeria right now. People don't just know, like, let me just buy this thing now. Who knows what they are going to sell this product again by next week, and which would obviously turn out to be right. What you bought for 19,600 now, by next week maybe 22,004. Like, yeah, just like we don't even know what's that wrong with this economy. Like, we don't know. Like, yes, when you just have the money, like, just spend. And it discourages savings too. Because what's the point of saving when money is losing value in your savings account, right? So you just let's just buy things now, and then it also affects for investment to happen. Then some people must have saved money for investment to happen. It is the money that some people save in the banks that investors go to take. So people are not saving money, right? That means national saving is going to be small. So what are investors going to take to fund investment projects, right? What are they going to do to fund businesses? And so it doesn't make sense. Then there can be fall in demand of product. I don't think I wrote down fall in demand of product. So because you now have to spend much more on some of the things that you're consuming, that may just reduce your demand for other products. Like I said earlier, we are the one that is used to buying drinks for everybody. So that there's a demand for drinks, right? Proper drinks, maybe juice or whatever. But now you are not going to that person's shop anymore. And so you are buying something else. All right. Okay, which is actually like an increase in demand for a particular product. Right. Some people can also gain when inflation period. Who cares about Zobo before inflation? Some people do, not a lot of people do. But now that um, so on a particular side, we can be experiencing decrease in demand, and on another side, we're experiencing increase in demand of inferior goods because your real income has reduced. So, what is an inferior good? What you're buying more of it when your income has fallen. So, because your real income has reduced, you're now buying more. So, there can be an increment in the demand for inferior goods and a reduction in the demand for normal goods. I think I like the point that way. Okay, then business also find it difficult to make plans. So how do you make projections, right? Well, you don't even know what your revenue is going to be. So before, like we just say, you expect that your revenue is going to grow by 10% because you've done this, you've done this, you've done that. Right? But then inflation has happened now, so like you don't even know. Are people going to buy this product? Like are people, like just everything just scatters. Like even the cost of raw materials. So initially your projection was you buy this thing for about 4 million naira. So when you put it into production, you are able to get like 8 million naira worth of product out of it. But today, your raw material is costing 4 million. By next month, it's costing 7 million. By so it makes planning so difficult. Like, what value exactly should you work with? The company that I work with right now mentioned um, during the week, I think that was on Monday, that the amount of money that the budget sent for a particular item, a particular raw material, they budgeted to use for 13 weeks. They exhausted that money in 5 weeks. In 5 weeks. So once you budgeted, which was incredibly high than what you have been budgeting in previous periods, right? You finished it in 5 weeks. What should have worked for 13 weeks? So look at something like that. Right. So planning becomes difficult. Now, then low level of foreign direct. Who wants to invest in a country that's experiencing inflation that there's uncertainty? You don't know the actual value of money. So today it is this, tomorrow inflation has increased again, it has gone down. So like you're not sure of what your cost of raw material is going to be. You're not sure if people are even going to buy this product that you're about to sell, right? And you're not even sure if the price is going to make some people to buy. So like, why should you invest in a country like that? That's a low level of foreign direct investment. It may lead to higher personal income taxes. So if the inflation is actually demand pull because people are spending money, so the government may say, okay, come, pay higher taxes. So that may lead to higher tax revenue. So you have positive things, negative things happening during the inflationary period, depending on the kind of inflation that you're experiencing. All right, then next, it may lead to more government spending if inflation is cost push. So if it is inflation as a result of higher cost of production, governments now begin to have to spend money on subsidies, subsidizing businesses, and improving infrastructures in the economy. So maybe this is happening because there is poor distribution network in the economy. So government will now have to like start funding the proper construction of roads, bridges, whatever, and put some other things in place. Right? So that is increments in government spending on infrastructural development. So such money may there's going to be a trade-off because there's finite resources. So there's going to be a trade-off. So if government is spending more on solving inflationary problems, so that means the government may have to be taking out loans to solve that problem. So which means that in the future, those loans have to be repaid, and then the government would have to charge higher taxes to pay off those loans in the future. So like it's trade off for everything, right? So nothing is free. Then next is businesses with inelastic demand will make more money. That's the point. So like transportation workers, like bus drivers, they make more money in the inflationary period. Because it's an inelastic product, like you have to keep buying, you have to keep transporting yourself. So like how how many places can you actually trek? Mm, so you just be angry. Price has been increased from this to that. Okay, you're not going out. You'll be doing more Zoom meetings, but just give it some time. You get used to it, and then keep going out again. So businesses with inelastic demand they make more money than inflationary period because they have to raise their prices. And for inelastic demand, you remember that a percentage increase in price will lead to a lesser percentage decrease in quantity demanded. So and that is going to lead to more revenue, right? So they make more money. So not necessarily more profits, right? Because we've not spoken about their cost of production, but like we are looking at more revenue. So I think I'm done. It's everything here. So whatever else we just added. So I think we've incredibly studied inflation, right? And so what next is an assignment, and the assignment is for you to recommend 5 practical and workable policies that can be used to address inflationary problem in your country. So discuss or recommend 5 practical and workable policies that can be used to address inflationary problems or the problem of inflation in your country. So that's it. And then bye. Have fun.